How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with Burn and Rye. Hope everybody's enjoying their June so far. You know, it's starting to heat up a little bit in the Southland, I feel like. And, and now we're kind of in that summer movie season. And what better way to kick it off this most recent weekend with a fun action epic that I don't feel like a lot of generations, maybe even like past millennials even will know this one. But this is the latest action epic with a little bit of comedy thrown in there. Also a reboot from a very popular cartoon and also action movie back in the 80s, I believe, which is Masters of the Universe, starring Nicholas Galitzine, who's kind of new on the scene. He's been in some stuff here and there if you've paid attention to, or if you've kind of watched a lot of movies and stuff. And also we got Idris Elba, Jared Leto, Camila Mendes, Alison Brie, and the list goes on and on. So being this is a new movie in theaters, we're going to keep it spoiler free, so that way we let y'all decide if you want to go watch it or not. So we're not going to ruin the story or anything for you. And if you do happen to like the movie or you just like tuning in with me and Burn, feel free to give us a thumbs up to show your support. Ring the bell for notifications. And, of course, subscribe just to keep joining the Rant community. And also, if you guys are interested in another movie, feel free to check out our spoiler-free review of Backrooms that was dropped recently, because that movie's still in theaters as well, and it's getting a lot of buzz. So definitely check that one out. But so Masters of the Universe is it's definitely like an action-adventure epic where a young boy is thrown from this, fantastical planet, Eternia, after a hostile takeover by this villain named Skeletor. And as he grows up, he has to find a way back to his home and reclaim it from the clutches of evil, which is as 80s as I can get it. So growing up as a kid, there was a He-Man Masters of the Universe TV show that got put back on Cartoon Network. I feel like it was a little bit more mature just because you watch old cartoons like, He-Man, maybe Conan the Barbarian if that was a thing, G.I. Joe. Some of those shows from like the 80s and 70s were very cheesy and borderline outdated, so that was my touch with this. So going into this movie, at least I had some background on the characters in this situation. And honestly, from the trailers and stuff, I was like, this movie could go either way. It could either be really fun or it could be really bad and just a giant dumpster fire. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by it. Having watching it in a regular theater because, Dolby and IMAX were actually pretty sold out for this, amazingly. Not even really sold out. They were very limited, and I just couldn't find the time. So that's just, if I got that correct. But, yeah. Anyways, Burn, what did you happen to think of this? Did you ever watch that show on Cartoon Network as a kid, or maybe the super old show from back in the day? And what did you think of this one?
Yeah, so I had seen maybe a handful of episodes of the original 80s cartoon back in the day. I remember that being on the TV at my babysitter's house and just catching a few episodes here and there. And then I did also see the Cartoon Network show that you're talking about that came out in the early 2000s, and that was pretty cool. And then also just recently seeing the latest revival of the He-Man cartoon on Netflix. Still have to watch the second season of that, but I did watch the first season and really enjoyed it. So coming into this, I do have I would say a passing familiarity with the Masters of the Universe and some of the characters in the world and just the general gist of it. I wouldn't say I'm a super diehard fan or anything like that. So coming into this, that was okay, this is cool. They're gonna do a live action reboot essentially. Never saw the original 80s movie with Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella, but I was eager to see what came up with this one because the director here is Travis Knight, and for people who don't know, he did the Laika stop motion movies like Kubo and the Two Strings, and then moved over to the live action front with the Bumblebee movie that came out a few years ago, which I really enjoyed. So I thought if anyone can sort of get the feeling of the Masters of the Universe right, it should be him because he brought such a nice heart and such a good sensible fun sensibility and sense of adventure to the movies that he's done already. And I will say, like you, I'm pleasantly surprised with this one. I think he did bring those tendencies over into this Masters of the Universe. Nicholas Galitzine, I thought he did a really good job as He-Man here, as or AKA Adam. You know, jumping back and forth between the different versions we see of him. Because for people who don't know, he's sort of like a normal dude, and once he gets the sword and says the magic words is when he becomes the He-Man character. And I think he did really good on both roles and on both sides of the role. Having only seen him in the movie Bottoms a few years ago, such a different character for him, but I'm glad that he was able to tap into those comedic roots that he did in Bottoms and bring that over to here. And I think he sold the action sequences as well. So I think he, flipping between the two is pretty difficult, and I think he did a really good job of that. And I think that goes for the rest of the cast. I think Camila Mendes was good. Idris Elba is just always great in everything he's in. But for me, I think the biggest standout, surprisingly enough, was Jared Leto's Skeletor. It seems like this is kind of a little bit of a hard character to kind of get right because, for anyone who has seen, bits and pieces of the cartoon, he's a very goofy character, but he's also a very evil character. So jumping back and forth between the two and having them be believable and not seem out of place, I thought he did a really good job of that. And I think the movie's tone as a whole really captured that that Saturday morning cartoon sense of fun and adventure, and also bringing in elements of peril and danger when it needed to. So jumping back and forth between that, I thought it did a fairly good job of it. I told you this in our private conversations, but this really reminded me a lot of Thor Ragnarok. And I think Thor Ragnarok owes a lot to sort of He-Man and those cartoons, because it sort of He-manified Thor for lack of a better term. I think it took a lot of those elements and put it into that story and made it work. So seeing that here wasn't really too much of a surprise, but it's just one of those things that if you like that movie, I think you'll like this one as well, because it strikes those similar balances. Where the movie sort of falters for me a bit is I think it kind of suffers a little bit from the tongue-in-cheek wink wink nod type of thing that sort of like phase 2 Marvel kind of suffered from, where it kind of feels like it needs to like look at the audience and kind of like nudge you and say like, hey, this is kind of ridiculous. I think we're at a point now where that sort of thing like doesn't really need to be done. I think you can approach these sort of more goofier, more weird IPs with a little bit more sincerity now. I think there's people kind of understand and are familiar with these little bit more niche IPs, and I don't think you really need to sort of signal to like the audience members who might not be in the know that this is kind of funny, isn't it? This is kind of weird. It's like, no, just be what you are, and I think just embrace that. So the fact that it did that a couple times, while the comedy here is pretty funny and in moments works, I think it sort of relied a little bit too much on that sort of like wink and nod type of humor that got a little bit grating with the Marvel movies, and unfortunately it's much of the same here, where you do a little bit too many times and it's like, okay, it feels like you're a little bit embarrassed of yourself in a sense. But other than that, had a fun time with pretty much everything else.
Yeah, again, I like being my touches with it are also the Netflix show and the Cartoon Network show. Growing up, I felt like this was a very epic kind of universe and stuff. So, going into it, I was expecting a little bit more seriousness. And given the character's name is He-Man, like the world is very fantastical. It's definitely still very 80s like. It's one of those things that's hard to. You don't want to take itself too seriously, or else there's no fun to be had. And that's also
with characters with names like Trapjaw and Ram Man, and all the silly Fisto. It's like, it's hard to really be like, you got to come into this and think it's like could be a really serious thing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fine. I'm glad. I'm really glad the humor worked for you, Bern, and I think it worked for a lot of people. Like even the theater I was in, it wasn't super packed, but there were good amount of laughs in there. I just feel that. I feel like it just was too lighthearted, almost too self-aware of how ridiculous everything is, and it definitely kind of took the epicness out of it in a way. Like I feel like there could have been some really cool like action hero moments and stuff like that, and there were some, but the humor definitely undercut a lot of those ones. Kind of like you said. I think you put it best with the whole how like Marvel 2 and even Phase 3, they definitely did the whole like, oh well, we got to be funny because we can't be too serious. And it's like something ridiculous like this can be serious, but you've got to walk that line of like, let's have some fun with it. We're aware of what we're working with here, but we can also take this story seriously because there are some good characters and good character work here. And like you, I think the biggest standouts for me were Jared Leto and Nicholas Galtzine, which were very unexpected, mostly because of his performance in Bottoms. I know he's done some serious stuff. He was in that movie with Anne Hathaway where he was like a younger guy going after an older woman. I forgot what that was called. I never saw it, but it's just I kept thinking of Bottoms, but then watching this movie, I was like, okay, good. This guy really does have some range. I'm fine with this. But he knows how to be an action hero, which was great. But he was actually really funny, and
it's very much like a Sebastian Stan going from Hot Tub Time Machine to
right?
to Winter Soldier type of thing.
Exactly, but Sebastian Stan definitely went more of the serious route. But in Thunderbolts, he kind of walked that line of being like funny and badass at the same time. And then I think Jared Leto. His career has definitely been rocky. He doesn't have the best reputation, but I think this is one of those roles that's like, you know what, we can still give this guy a chance. Like, give him the right role, the right material to work with. He can be funny, and he also can be a pretty solid villain. I think the effects with this movie were pretty freaking great for majority of the part. There may be a couple scenes here and there where they were like, okay, you could definitely tell where the budget fell short, or they were like, okay, let's just edit this quickly and get it done with. But yeah, I think it was great. My only other complaint was that I feel like tonally it didn't know whether it wanted to be like family friendly or more like adult in a way with some of the jokes and like especially there was this one scene that was involving a couple of the main characters, and some of the things they said I was like, oh, this is a little bit different. And given we're from that generation where like Disney movies and some other movies we watched in like the 90s and stuff, they had some very there were some adult jokes sprinkled in our content here and there, but this one I was just like, I don't know what we're trying to be here. Are we trying to be like way more family? Are we trying to be more for the adults like from the 80s and stuff? So I just felt like tonally it was a little all over the place in some scenes, but I still had a lot of fun with this. I would not mind a rewatch of this one just because it's fun. It's got some good casting, great effects. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. Like I said, it's a fun movie we're going to go and see in the theater. Or if you want to save money and maybe wait, you could definitely see on a $5 Tuesday or just wait till streaming. But either way, I think if you watch this, there's going to be something nice you'll walk away from it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? Because it's like, when you do a Masters of the Universe movie, it's like, what sort of audience are you actually trying to get? Because as you mentioned, this is a very old property. Are they really sort of trying to get kids to watch this? It's like, I don't think that's the case, but like we'll have to see what. Like every movie, you want everybody as much people as you can to see it, but this one feels like it was done mainly for the fans. The fans of the original cartoons, or fans like us, who saw they came into this property either through the Cartoon Network show or the Netflix show. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one does on that front. But yeah, like for all the things you mentioned, I thought the cast was pretty great. The special effects, as you mentioned, were pretty cool for the most part. Like you mentioned, a couple of things here and there was like, that doesn't look that great, but it's in the grand scheme of things, this looks pretty cool. The score by Daniel Pemberton, who's one of my favorites working today. It was really fun, brought those sort of 80s synths rock vibes to it, which was a lot of fun. I think the action here was actually really cool and had some like punch to it. Like you mentioned, I guess in terms of the tone thing, there's some fight scenes here can feel pretty brutal, and I was pretty surprised by it. So really crunchy action. It's like it's like what you imagine when you got two action figures that are big muscular people and just like smashing them together. But this is what it would feel like, and I think they captured that pretty well. So yeah, look, I had a lot of fun with this one. Is it like anything like great or amazing? No, but I think this is a fun, summer blockbuster movie, and I think, you're gonna laugh, you're gonna see cool action and cool effects, and then, you can't really ask for more than that from something like a Masters of the Universe, I think. So yeah, I had a good time with this one. It's gonna be a 3 out of 5 for me as well. Like you, I was surprised how much I liked it, just because coming into it, it could have gone either way, but I'm glad it went the way of, being a fun summer blockbuster action adventure fantasy sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I mean, because again, with a name like Master of the Universe, the main character being He-Man, and just this entire universe, it could go really bad really quickly if not done right. I don't even remember. I don't even know how popular the '80s movie was with Dolph Lundgren. I remember I saw like a few minutes of it when I was younger because it was on TV, and I was like, "What the heck is this, man? This is garbage." But I haven't rewatched it since. I don't know, but yeah, 3 out of 5 for both me and Burn. Again, not the best, but definitely not the worst. Still a very fun movie to kick off summer in a good on a positive note. So yeah, let us know in the comments without what y'all thought about it. No spoilers, of course. And yeah, we're going to the summer season. Our mid-year reviews coming up in a few weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But until next time, everyone, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch you all on the next one.